everybody. Welcome to the TechRaptor Podcast. I'm Robert Scarpanito, your features editor.
Rutledge Doggett, site founder.
Austin Souther, staff writer.
Yeah, we have a guest this week. We have Austin Souther.
Because both Andrews died.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, that might be morbid.
A little bit.
Maybe you just traded like two
Every time they're
Andrews for
gone, they're
one
dead
Austin.
to me.
We traded two Andrews for an Austin.
Yep.
Yeah. Our resident Florida man, Stretch, is off and away. And then we've swapped him in for Andrew Otten, who is our current resident Florida man, because he is actually in Florida. So I guess
Watching
it's
his
just
cousin play football.
Yeah. So it's part of the lore of our pod, I guess, where we always have to have at least one person in Florida.
Yep.
So that's
Yep.
just the only way it all works.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's the cosmic engine that keeps this art going. This week, we're going to talk about Prodeus and DioField Chronicles later in the pod. But first, let's start with some news. E3 has been officially back. I guess it never left. It was always in our hearts, except for 2020 and 2021, and pretty
It
much
was in our
2022.
hearts and on the darknet.
So ReedPop, they're in charge of E3 2023, and they've announced the dates for the next year's show, where June 11th is going to be what they're calling, quote, partner digital events. And then the full physical show will start on June 13th and run until June 16th. And there's going to be, quote, registered industry personnel and media days, which is June 13th through 15th. And then E3 gamer days, which are also on June 15th and then 16th.
Yeah.
So they're kind of
I'm glad
approaching
they're
it.
splitting it.
Yeah, like it's a Gamescom style approach, right? Where at first it's media, then everyone else can join in.
Yeah.
Well,
'Cause
media and business.
the year I went, it was public and media, and it was hard to get around.
Mhm.
There was a lot of people.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've always liked about Gen Con and some of the other ones I've been is the early access as media at times to kind of scope things out ahead of time, and have a little bit of extra time, rather than having to kind of fight for, I got to get from here to here in 5 minutes, and
Wade through the crowd.
Yep. So,
Don't they give you something like an hour, or they gave us like an hour for media in 2019, and that was just not even enough to do like one appointment?
Yeah, that's media hour.
The show floor is huge. Demos could probably take up to an hour, so you only have like, I remember us having to split up and like, all right, we're going to go to this game, and that's like the only one, and then we had to, like the crowds just started pulling in, so yeah, it's like,
yeah. I mean, PAX has been doing it for a while that same way too, where like there's an hour of media on the first day before everyone else can join in. If I had to guess, they might do the same thing for like that one day, that first day where it's public and media, where like media gets in early. But at least at that point, that's going to be the third day media can be there. So hopefully by then you already are familiar with the show floor. You've probably ticked off like, okay, I've already checked A, B, C. Now I need to go to D. At least I have media hour to do that, right?
I mean, I guess we speak from a different perspective than most gamers, in that
we do.
We're there to do coverage. We're there to meet with developers and publishers, and get the scoops on games that we can share. So I think E3 is also kind of a whole nother beast compared to PAX, in that it has always been heavily like promotion and coverage favored, and I'm glad that they're sticking to that, because I think it's a lot of media has been frustrated with E3 the last couple of years in terms of how coverage has been handled. Even their online offering was an absolute disaster.
We got doxxed one time as well.
It wasn't just one time. You could get to like the past 7 years when that first time that the entire media list was available online, with personal addresses and phone numbers. I think that shook a lot of confidence in our industry in terms of like trust for the ESA and trust for E3 to handle our information. And I think again, ReedPop does New York Comic Con, PAX West, PAX East, so on and so forth. Like, they've got a good track record of managing events. But this is different than any of their other events. So it is nice to see them keep the spirit of E3 that we've had for so long going. Because there's a vibe to E3 that is hard to explain. You know, there's going to a con and kind of walking in and seeing this huge show floor, but there's just this kind of energy around E3 when you're there, because if you're media, everybody around you is just as excited to be there as you are. So I hope to make a return at some point. I know that we're talking E3 next year. Andrew and I are starting to talk through potential Gamescom next year. You know, as an outlet, we've grown enough that we can do more when it comes to these events. So definitely curious to see how next year goes and kind of expand what we do in the future.
I think what I'm the most curious about from an experience perspective, I mean, I want to get away from us privileged hoity-toity game journalists, right? Like E3 media days, or not media days, E3 public days in at least 2019, from what I remember, it was like $1,000 as a public person to get a full pass into E3. Compare that to PAX, it's like 200-ish, 250 or so at most for like a full 4-day, 3-day pass.
Gen Con's about $250 for a 4-day.
Yeah. And then E3's like, yeah, fork over a fucking grand to get in and just stand in line.
You're standing in line for probably like 3 games at most for like 8 hours. I don't know. It depends on how popular the game was, but I know like Borderlands 3 was really popping in 2019. There was like
7
Cyberpunk.
Remake. Yeah, so that's why I'm curious to see, because now this is ReedPop. ReedPop is generally more sensible with its prices. I'm very curious to see what they're going to price. Only 2 days. You're only going to get a 2-day pass for public, right? So
it'll be interesting
how much it'll be.
They'll probably stick in line with a lot of their other events and know that like if they price it right, they'll make up the difference. And I think that a lot of where E3 has stumbled in recent years and why it's kind of lost its bluster is, number one, the pricing, and number two, the pricing for devs and publishers. I think a big reason why we've seen, even pre-pandemic, you know, Xbox and PlayStation and these guys all having their same events, is the costs are astronomical. And so ReedPop's got to contend with that and find ways to bring these larger publishers back into the fold and keep Nintendo and keep Sony and make sure they have a presence, because that's what drives the value of these shows for the public, is seeing some of the top tier biggest publishers and developers. So
well, to me, that actually brings up a really good question, right? Is like, so especially that digital part of the show, the 2 days before the official show, where they're going to be doing those like partnered marketing experiences, whatever they're calling them, right? Like, is Sony coming back? Is Nintendo going to be like, that's cool, we're just going to do our Nintendo Direct anyway, so we don't give a shit?
Not.
I wonder if EA is going to like get rid of their EA Play thing, just partner with it, or were they always partnered with E3 with their Play? No?
They've always been like, we're going to open our lemonade stand across the street, and we're totally not related to the other lemonade stand. We're just there.
We're just there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's interesting. I think this year is going to be an important year in the history of the show, in terms of we've not really had it the last couple of years, and it's coming back. It's coming back under new management. And so my guess is a lot of media, a lot of publishers and developers are going to be feeling this year out to be like, okay, is this really worth the investment every year when we could just go to something like PAX or Gamescom? Which I say that, I had to pull up the article, but a 1-minute trailer in Gamescom's opening night live was $127,000 per minute. It's not cheap to showcase at these shows. And so devs are, especially with the economic state that things are in at the moment, they're going to have to contend with those costs and make sure that there's an ROI tied to it. So I think ReedPop has their work cut out for them next year.
Yeah. Just because June time period is going to be so. I mean, it's always the summer games mess, right? Like everyone's doing their own show, and if you don't want to do E3, Jeff Keighley's right around the corner. You can just hit him up, be like, "Hey, I've got the next Elden.
Summer.
Yeah, I've got the next Elden Ring. I promise. Use it for one last thing." You know, so it's. I feel like this is going to be an uphill battle. Like I know ReedPop is pretty good at putting on conventions. I've been to some really good ones put on by ReedPop, but I think the baggage that comes with the two character phrase E3 is heavy.
Yeah.
I almost feel like it's going to be a make or break for them. Like this is their one shot to prove that E3 is still relevant. And if not, then publishers will just, they're convinced to do digital. I mean, already since E3's been gone the past few years, we've seen all these publishers, do their own thing. Even smaller things like the Wholesome Games Direct, like that's a great way to highlight a whole bunch of indie games. And I guess Steam too, they throw up a whole bunch of demos, like
the
it
Steam
almost seems
Next
like
Fest.
It's basically
we have another one coming up.
E3 at home, or it can be. It has potential to be. So I wonder, what else can E3 offer that's different now than what we've seen the past few years.
Yeah, I think it has to change with the times. Again, like you said, like these one-off shows and Steam Next Fest, like the way games operate now is so different. It's not physical media. It's not behind closed doors type stuff. It is everything is out there, and it's not hard to get it out there anymore.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see if E3 remains relevant in June. But for now, let's talk about something that will forever be in our hearts and forever be relevant. Rest in power, Google Stadia, because Google has made the difficult decision to start winding things down and lay it to rest on January 18th, which is such a shame because that means we can't play Dead Space Remake on Stadia.
Well, it's funny too because it was like 2 months ago that they were like, yeah, Stadia's good, we're fine. And then this.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and they say they've made the difficult decision this last week to wind it down. And I would argue they made that decision in December 2019, a month after they released Stadia, to start winding things down, because I don't think they've ever tried to ramp things up, at least from like its business strategy perspective. Like there was never any big money moves, right? Like the exclusives were at best like AA tier games, but there's no like
an exclusive to
Orcs Must Die 3.
Orcs Must Die 3, which then the year after it was a Stadia exclusive, they remarketed it as coming out brand new video game for all the consoles. Orcs Must Die 3. Let's don't talk about Stadia. Right?
They weren't very quiet about it.
Gylt, GYLT, that was one. Lost Words, I think. Yeah, like that's the thing, right? These indie games that are like, I mean, I'm sure they're great, games that could be fun, but that's not, Sekiro, that's not God of War, that's not, an exciting game where someone's going to be like, yeah, I'll pay for a Stadia Pro subscription to play that because that looks so cool, right?
Yep. I think, well, it's interesting too. They have been talking like, we're fine, everything's fine with Stadia. And then they just drop this announcement. And even developers who are supposed to drop games the same day that they made the announcement, and then like Mike Rose from No More Robots in November are like, okay, we spent all this time developing for your platform. Where's my money? Like,
yeah,
there were a couple devs that were 100% relying on this release as an exclusive to fund their studio. And the question is, what does Google do now? Because if you don't even give them notice for them to start planning and then you drop this, like you are fundamentally potentially about to kill their studio.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, that's just an insane business decision to be like, yeah, we're not even going to talk to you guys that are developing for our platform. We're just going to, tweet it out.
I mean, it was an insane business decision from the start because it was clear they were in it for the money, but there was no passion. Like when they did the presentation for it,
it was so boring.
The CEO of Google or something like that, and he's obviously not a gamer, and like I know, gamers, whatever, but it's clear he had no knowledge of what he was talking about, and it just felt really stiff and business-like, almost like Amazon trying to, with their games. You see similar results. They're not doing great, and so
At least Amazon. Well, they're publishing games too, so it's like, okay, there we go. Like they're doing something more than just like here's Luna, you know.
Well, I mean, and you can contrast it with an event like Search On that Google did this week, kind of talking about some of the new search features that are coming. And it's like, it is entertaining. They all really care about what they're talking about and the features that they're building and like the idea of what they want to build with Google Search and Google Maps and kind of the experiences they want to create around it. And Stadia was just like, you can play games in your browser later. And like it was just jarring. It was like, oh, this could be really cool. And you get 5 minutes into the presentation and you're like, I'm not feeling it.
Yeah. And I think that seeing the fallout of where, like what's happening now that we know Stadia is truly actually on the chopping block and not just us assuming, right? We have Ubisoft being like, okay, you can transfer all your purchases over to your Ubisoft like PC account, so that's fine. But then there's that one person who has like 6,000 hours or something in Red Dead Redemption 2 on Stadia, begging Rockstar to like, please, can I transfer this?
Well, that dude's playing at work, so yeah.
Just how much more can you play after 6,000 hours though? Like
you gotta hunt those rabbits, man.
I guess.
That's all I can think of. Yeah,
that's like WoW level of hours for me.
But in a single player, big open world cowboy, rootin' tootin' shooting game. Yeah. And so I guess to be fair to Google, they're at least refunding people who have purchased like hardware for Stadia and games on the Stadia platform. They're refunding them through their Google accounts, which is cool, but I guess there's no refund for 6,000 hours, right? How is that being paid back? Is it damages? Emotional damages, maybe?
Therapy? What about you?
Suggest that either way.
Are you getting your refund, Mr. Local Stadia adopter?
I kind of don't care if I do or don't, if I'm being honest, because I knew going in, this is a waste of money for me. So whether I get the money back, I am kind of indifferent.
Are you saying it was your Sheeb coin?
I guess it was more of a like, if this works, cool. That's $100 or so well spent. If it doesn't work, well, it's Google. It's probably not going to work. So,
I think
Google graveyard.
It's more apt to compare it to Ouya, like
the Ouya.
I have mine like right over there.
Well, so there you go. One of gaming's greatest inventions died way too soon.
It'll be a nice paperweight.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Stadia is just one of those things where it's like it could have been cool, and then Microsoft was just like, "I see you've lit the torch. Now we're gonna take it." And kind of keep running with it because the xCloud is doing what Stadia was trying to do, but executing with a better business platform and sensibility behind it, where purchasing things is easy, and if you don't want to purchase, you got Game Pass, right? So I guess you need Game Pass to do streaming, but all of that tied together makes way more sense than Stadia's, which is like you buy Stadia Pro to stream in high def, but then you still have to buy games.
Yeah.
I mean, Xbox has the advantage that if you buy it on if you have Xbox Games Pass, you can play it on your Xbox or xCloud. So it's like you're not tied to that specific platform. You can play it on PC. You could hop into xCloud. You can play it on your Xbox Series X. Like there's a lot more options. Whereas Stadia is just kind of like It's in this one place, and that's it. And if you want to like jump from one platform to another, if you have 6,000 hours in Red Dead Redemption, then
seek help.
Sorry.
I mean, you have that the Stadia controller at least. Like that's
You've at least got
that's
that.
something, right?
You've at least got this super generic controller.
Yeah, it's like an okay controller. I think I saw because it doesn't even have Bluetooth, so you can't even repurpose it to like be a controller for your laptop or something.
Nice.
Because it's supposed like the idea of the controller was to connect directly to your Wi-Fi, so it's a direct connection to the server, which is smart. But then if you destroy the server, you just have a hunk of plastic.
Yeah, you can make a memorial with it, Ouya, and all the older
in your
consoles.
backyard.
Like some LED candles around it, maybe.
Yeah, maybe put a Pebble Watch nearby.
Yeah. And then another big businessy news sort of thing in the games industry, Saudi Arabia, the government of Saudi Arabia is going to be putting in, I think, about $37 billion in the games industry. And there was also that one story of, this is the government of Saudi Arabia looking to spend like, what is that, 13-14 billion bucks to buy a big AAA publisher. I mean, they haven't said who or what, but it's like they're willing to throw money at that, I guess.
Yeah, 13 billion is a big number, and that opens up the door to a lot of publishers.
I mean, well, or developers, right? Like, I remember Obsidian. Yeah, like, didn't Microsoft buy Obsidian for like 8 billion or something like that?
Somewhere in that range. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not going to be anywhere near the Activision Blizzard acquisition, but 13 billion is still a very large developer publisher or multiple medium to large size developer publishers.
I mean, Bungie was bought for 3.1 bill.
Yeah.
I looked up how much Nintendo was worth, and at least we're in the clear there, so we don't have to worry about that. But I mean, I feel like I've seen rumors of people saying, "Oh, they could buy up Nintendo." Didn't they buy like a small share of it at the very least?
Yeah,
I'm sure they have something.
They have a share, yeah, but they're not like, they don't own Super Mario and his best friend Luigi.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm trying to think of like all the other publishers they could buy. Obviously, they're probably thinking, well, Sony and Microsoft and Embracer Group are buying up everything. We better buy up something before we can't get into the gaming industry at all, and it's just going to cause even more fervor. So yeah, I think along with Saudi Arabia, we'll see all these other companies like that are buying up a whole bunch, and they're just going to be huge like groups now. I don't know. The whole landscape is changing very rapidly.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it says a lot too about how much the games industry is worth when like you have to be waving around billions to be taken seriously when it comes to like purchasing companies in some way, shape, or form. Like if they were just like, oh yeah, we have like $37,000, we'd like to buy a company, it's like, yeah, okay, buddy, like good luck with that, right? Like, but then again, 37,000 is like a lot of money to the average person, right? But
yeah,
when you're talking about companies, it's like chump change.
It's nothing. Yeah.
Valuations
are a very interesting thing that I continue to try and understand.
Yeah, how's the sheep coin doing?
Not well. At this point, it is my Stadia.
Right.
Yeah,
it is also in the cloud.
It is also in the cloud. Yes.
Yeah.
Worth absolutely nothing.
It's another way to say that it went to heaven because it died.
All dogs do go to heaven.
All sheeps go to heaven.
And the reason we've been talking about both Stadia and Saudi Arabia is didn't expect to rhyme, but there you go. Our resident favorite games journalist in the industry, famous Cuphead beater, Dean Takahashi, wrote a story this week called The Dean Beat, 2 stories that show the opportunity and heartbreak of modern gaming, where he compares the heartbreak of Stadia announcing its impending death and the opportunity of Saudi Arabia putting billions of dollars into the industry. And it is full of some interesting
There's even
takes.
mention of the layoffs at Future and some of our other colleagues as like an opportunity, and it just like I don't know. I understand that some people get very heated about Dean, and I think that it's not fair to be particularly nasty. I just think that a lot of the word choice in that article was not good.
Yeah. Well, it's very like investor geared, or very business focused, right?
It was too
like
positive, not a lot of kind of, it was just like this very, it read a little bit like a press release at times, in terms of like talking about the potential of Saudi Arabia coming in. And it's been edited at this point to talk a little bit about some of the human rights issues in Saudi Arabia, the assassinations of journalists. Like I think there's a very negative connotation to Saudi Arabia, and that's not a thing against its people. It's more of a thing against its leadership,
the government.
Government, and the government getting involved with gaming, an industry that is immensely sexist, is incredibly abusive towards its workers and its people. That's not a good combo.
No, it's kind of not. And to then kind of turn that around and be like, well, it's a shame that all of these Stadia employees are going to be laid off, but at least Saudi Arabia will save them. It's like, for one, is the Saudi Arabian government the thing that will save gaming? No, not even God can save gaming. But even then, it's like, I mean, even then, it's not like the Saudi Arabian government, like, we're expecting them to be like, hey, every person stayed up by Stadia, come to us. We will help you. We will fund you, right? Like, there's no guarantee that that's how it's going to work.
That's
right?
Wishful thinking. Like, from an investment standpoint, that's just not how it works. It's not, oh, our studio just lost our thing, and somebody just swoops in and goes, oh, well, we'll buy it.
Yeah.
It just, I get the sentiment. I think that, yes, more money in gaming is good. But two, with money comes problems. When you get venture capital involved,
there's a famous parable about that.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. Probably in the Bible. I don't know.
Of course, Dean
there's
was also
99 problems.
He was also getting flack for basically going, there's all these human rights issues in Saudi Arabia, but you know what's pretty cool? More money into gaming, right?
Yeah.
And it just missed the point, the entire article. And like I think that was edited out after, but it was just really poor taste.
Yeah, because the original quote read, Saudi Arabia has a lot of challenges around human rights, and it has issues as a nation for sure. These big investments might distract people from those things, but at least the nation doesn't have its head in the sand when it comes to recognizing the importance of gaming. And that graph has since been edited, or instead of saying distract people from those things, he actually lists out some of those things, like how Mohammed bin Salman has a bit of a reputation problem, as he says in the article, which is putting it very lightly.
Very lightly.
And then mentions the assassination of Kamal Khashoggi, the journalist. So he gets into some of those quote unquote issues, but it's still like,
it's still a softball. I think
it took him being called out on Twitter to put that there, though.
Well, yeah, and it's not even that it's a softball, but it's still like the sentiment is still okay. So women have less rights in Saudi Arabia, but at least they support the gamers. At least the oppressed minority known as gamers are being saved by Saudi Arabia. It's like, that isn't the best take to have. It's a very business, like cold calculating business decision type of take, where like more money is better for the industry, but
it's very businessy. I mean, business is very quick to turn a blind eye to suffering if it means there's dollars. And I don't know. I don't want to project why that type of wording would be used or approved. But it's just not, it's not worth doing if you are a journalist. I think that most journalists are going to be, your job is to be critical. And to me, saying that gaming getting more money is important in the same vein as, well, they have human rights issues, is just completely missing it. Like, I think that again, gaming has a shit ton of issues. I think we all know that. There's enough people that ignore it already. We don't need more problems that are already being ignored brought into this industry, especially when it comes to women. It's already bad enough. And I think that's the thing that's the most frustrating about this industry is how driven by money it is, and how quick people are to forget or ignore issues around the treatment of others. I mean, that's literally my whole shtick now is how do I take better care of my team? Because not to be mean, most other sites fucking suck at it. Like, I think that there needs to be more of a focus there. We need more work on mental health. We need more work around labor laws and unions and all that kind of stuff. And bringing in Saudi Arabia into that mix isn't going to help.
Also, like, I don't think countries really should be involved in, like,
private sector.
I mean, I know it's nothing new. There's, you know, government grants and stuff, but at the same time, if they have, like, a huge amount of creative control, it just, I don't know, it doesn't sit right with me.
Well, you say grants. There's a difference between investment and grant. Yeah, I think is the big thing. A grant is this is to help you do what you will. There's outside of maybe the PPP loans, which are a terrible example because that went well.
Well, there's no fraud in that, at least. Never been.
And then investment is that government is directly involved, and that government is also going to push policy that makes them their investment back. And that is where that kind of stuff can't happen. That is bad.
It's like the same issues people have with Tencent, but probably worse because Tencent is still a private company as far as I know. The laws are a little different in China, I'm sure, but like it's not the Chinese government owning a gaming company, it's Tencent. So
and there's just it's more Chinese regulation versus Chinese control of Tencent. I think so. Tencent has to follow the rules in China, but they are not necessarily controlled by China. If they break one of those rules, they will get smacked down.
And I think too that this gets into that idea of, I think historically governments have invested in the arts, right? Because there is value in building up the culture of your nation, right? What are you saying? Where do you write, like, with your face?
Kurt Schilling.
Yeah.
He took state money.
But I mean,
Kingdoms of Amalur, like that's the biggest example of a blunder in the United States with gaming and government.
But that's the thing, right? Is that like I think that we're getting into this point where more and more like it's like your gaming is considered part of your nation's like culture, right? Like America and Japan have kind of dominated the global gaming culture for a while. Like everyone knows Mario and everyone knows like, I don't know, like PlayStation, right? Like those Sony exclusives that are built here in the Seattle, Bellevue area. People know that shit. Like Destiny is based out of here. But I think once you start getting into other cultures, it's a little less known. I think there are more games coming out of other countries that more people are playing and are aware of. But I think that's part of it is that these countries are investing in it as well. I think Canada is investing in some of their gaming. I think Australia is as well. I think that game that Auden mentioned a few weeks ago, the one with the musical RPG that the Dragon Age guys invested in, David Gator, right? That is also partially funded by the Australian government, but that's in a way like an investment into your culture, right? So then at what point is this Saudi Arabia investing in its culture or just trying to get into an industry, right? Like that I think is where the tension is lying in this story, especially when part of the story is they want to buy another company as opposed to building up their own, you know, Saudi Arabian development teams, right?
Yeah, I think that it kind of, maybe I'm jaded too, right? Like the United States government and corporations and our law have become so intertwined that we just don't need more of it. You know, when we're acting in the best interests of the investors and the governments and the lobbyists more so than the people playing the games, that's a problem. And that's where I think a lot of my trepidation comes from. Is it's just not good to mix government and business. The lines are way too blurred.
This kind of reminds me, on a much smaller scale, Saudi Arabia teamed up with a Japanese anime studio, and they made like an anime based on some Saudi Arabian, I don't know, story. I'd like to know how that turned out and kind of see what happened there, because obviously they're investing in video games now, culture, anime. I don't know. It's interesting, but yeah, I see some parallels to it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's the story that it's like, and in some ways I do agree with Dean that yes, there is more opportunity now. Like when there is money, there is opportunity. The question is, who's going to take these opportunities and what are they going to do with these opportunities? That's what I think a lot of people are
taking. And what are the strings that are attached?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a wrap on the news for this week. Let's chat about some games. And for now, I think Austin, you and I, let's shut up and let Rut have his 20-minute soapbox to talk about Hunt Showdown.
All right, I'll take my nap now.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you can turn off your camera. We come back. I'll give you a call.
All right, got it.
Oh my gosh, you guys.
I'll put a cardboard cutout of myself and just
I'm gonna get on my Hunt soapbox for a minute because they dropped details on the latest patch this week, which had a lot of fairly decent stuff. They're making a lot of changes to address the sniper meta, to address some of the ways that players play, and really put more emphasis on sneaking and being more careful, not just kind of chatting it up. And for the most part, all of those changes are good. I'm cool with them. But what I'm upset about, and what I think the community is upset about too, is this new, first of all, we're in like 1930s, the bayou of Louisiana, and somehow you have a bug drone that you can throw. It's just a drone of like beetles.
Like an electric drone.
I don't know if it's electric. That's the thing. But as a hunter, you can control it. And I'm like, I don't fully understand this, but we'll go with it. The spider has a fucking face in its mouth. Very, like, if you ever look very closely at the bosses in Hunt Showdown, they're terrifying.
It's a big spider.
Yep. Yeah, spider is the worst. But like basically they built this as an idea to kind of stop the camping meta, in that you can kind of throw this drone, go over and damage somebody who might be camping in a bush or something, which is very common in Hunt Showdown. And I'm looking at any of you who sit in a match for 45 minutes in the same bush. Find something to do.
Wait, so is there no, like, most battle royales have like a circle, right? That like,
nope,
there's nothing like that.
Yeah, so it's depending on the number, if you're in duos or solos or whatever, there's typically 12 people in the match, at least in duos. And you each spawn in different areas, and the goal is to collect 3 clues to figure out where the bounty is, and the bounty is a boss. And so the goal is to find him, kill him, and get out with the bounty. And once you've killed him, you have to banish, and that is the period that players can come in and try and assault the compound or whatever. Just depends on where you're at, and take you out so that they can take the bounty and get out and get the money that's associated with that. And the bosses are unique. Some of them are super annoying. There's rumors about a new one that's coming. I'll be curious to see what that is. But I think the core issue with the community right now is this drone becomes something of an exploit, in that you can throw this, and I've seen some videos of it where somebody just throws the drone, and what it does is you can blow it up next to somebody. It does a tiny bit of damage, but it does 5 damage and then causes them to be poisoned and bleed. And if you have poison sense, which is a newer trait that they've introduced, you can see poisoned people from 150 meters away.
Oh.
So then you've essentially got aim hacks, because all you got to do is turn around and hit them, and it makes the most powerful gun in the game, which is not a one-shot kill unless it's a headshot. It makes it a one-shot kill after you've hit them with the drone. And so not only can you do a small amount of damage, but you can instantly kill that person by just immediately switching over and shooting them.
And you tag because you're tagging them essentially.
Yeah. Or you can equip that same gun with poison ammo, shoot the person, and the drone has poison sense too. So you shot them, they're bleeding, they're poisoned, and if you're poisoned, you can't heal. And so it creates this loop of, if you get hit by either of those, you're pretty much screwed. Like, you can't heal yourself, you're already down 5 health, so you shoot him, or you shoot them, you're down to 5 health, and all they have to do is throw a drone at you. And it just shakes up the meta, I think, in a really negative way that no longer accentuates smart play in terms of tactical. It becomes cancerous and frustrating. And the problem I have is that Hunt has not been receptive to this type of criticism in the past from the community, saying like, hey, we really don't like this, we need a rework. It's just kind of been like, okay, here's more monetization. And my worry is that this continues to we go back to where things were about 6 months ago, where the population was on a decline, and then they went, oh shit, everybody's frustrated, let's fix the issues. And so they worked on the trade window, they worked on a lot of these other problems, and things have skyrocketed back up. My worry is we're going to go back into that trend because they didn't learn their lesson. They haven't listened to the community, because the community, the Reddit, the subreddit is on fire. Like,
I mean, that's just Reddit.
Almost
though.
Everybody's like, I hate this, I don't like it. It's frustrating. And the devs are just quiet. And so that's my soapbox right now, is I love that game immensely, and I don't want to see it die.
So right now it's just feeling a little buggy.
Fuck. Well played.
Thank you.
Well played.
Thank
Which,
you.
to be fair, there are, I mean, there's a boss called Assassin that's literally just made up of beetles. So.
Oh, gross.
Yeah.
Man, they like their insects in that game, huh?
Mm-hmm. All the bosses are like, they're like some form of like insect, it feels like, because there's like this in the boss layers, there's always this kind of like cocoony type stuff all over. And so it's definitely, it's got that vibe.
Right.
Very buggy game.
Yeah. I always find it interesting to hear about games that like live service games like this, where an update happens that really pisses off the community. Because I remember this actually happened like a month ago or so with Path of Exile. I think that went through a similar thing, because I used to love Path of Exile, but then it just gets very bloated. There's a lot of like, they keep adding mechanics with every season instead of narrowing it down and honing it and focusing on it.
Honing in what's best. Yeah,
exactly. And then I think in the most recent update, or at least the one a month or so ago, they like kind of nerfed a lot of really strong abilities, and then like lowered loot drop rate, which is like the last thing you want to do in an action RPG.
Yes.
Because when it's already hard to find shit, and then they make it even harder to find shit, like there are people who've been looking for new action RPGs because of this, or people that are jumping back to like Torchlight or Diablo or something because it's just not good anymore. Yeah, Torchlight.
Probably not Torchlight 3.
Yeah.
What a disappointment.
They have a mobile game coming out. Just saying.
Yeah, I tried it, made it 6 minutes into it, and I was like, I can't do this.
Wow.
It's basically like on because they put it on Steam, but it's the exact same interface pretty much. The window's like this big. If you make it bigger, it's not like the graphics don't get better. And I'm like, please make a good one, because Torchlight 1 and 2 are phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, I can only hope that, well, if there's one you want to keep your eye on, Superfuse. I played that at PAX. That's Raw Fury publishing it. It's going to be in early access maybe by the end of this year. That's what they're aiming for.
There's one coming out on the 12th that was like a surprise announcement. Undecember is a new action RPG coming from out of Korea.
That's a name.
Okay.
So it's similar to like Lost Ark, where it was in the East first, and now it's coming to the West. It looks pretty cool.
Not really selling it for me, but
yeah, well, you play retail WoW, so
yeah, I mean,
Good taste.
best WoW.
Good taste. Sure. Austin, do you want to talk about DioField Chronicles? You've been playing this very underrepresented gem from Square Enix that kind of shipped out there and just let it be.
I mean, I wouldn't call it a gem necessarily. It's a decent game, but there's some issues. You know, I want to say there were a couple outlets and some tweets on Twitter saying, you know, like why is Square Enix, you know, throwing out these games with no marketing or anything really behind them just to die. I don't think there were even review codes given. It just kind of seems like they didn't want it to exist, but as a tactical, you know, strategy player, I wanted it to exist, so I decided to play it. And yeah, I mean, it's not a gem, but it's pretty good. I will say there are some issues with narrative. It just seems like that was a very, very much an afterthought, because like conversations they end too soon. They're very brief, and it's just a way to give you some context to fight battles.
So it has the opposite problem of triangle strategy, where it's like 80% visual novel and then 20% strategy game.
Pretty much. Like, I was thinking about that actually. I'm like, well, I didn't really like triangle strategy as much because there was so much talking, but at the same time, there's like too little in DioField, so you have to find a happy medium. And I think if you got something in between those two games, like Fire Emblem, then, you know, you'd be good. But speaking of Fire Emblem, I kind of thought that DioField would be a bit like that. But, you know, it's real time instead of turn based. So you can pause time to kind of like pick who you want and maneuver them, but it's not like you're taking turns with other people. It's like very active, and you kind of have to micromanage a bit like a RTS on a smaller scale. But it's pretty cool. Like, it works really well on the controller. In fact, I mean, it's on PC as well, but I think I'd rather use a controller than a mouse for that type of thing.
Because you're playing on PS5?
Yeah. And, yeah, it feels really well. And I think the visuals are also kind of cool. There's, like, this diorama type of aspect to it, which... and you can, like, zoom out from the battlefield, and your guys are, like, little, like, chess pieces, basically, and, like, the whole map is basically one, like, square piece, like it's on a game board, and it's kind of cool to look at. But, yeah, I don't think it's gonna, like, knock anybody's socks off, and I'm kind of going through it slowly, because I'm like, okay, I mean, it's fun, but, like, there are probably other things I'd rather play. But I still think, like, if you're a fan of strategy games, then give it a shot, because not many people even know about it. I was one of 2 pre-orders at GameStop in my town.
Oh, I thought you were about to say in the world.
No. Well, I mean, they sent the game, like, late to every store in my town, so I'm assuming it's a similar situation other places. It's just not, like, a very popular game. Probably the first time some people are hearing about it, to be honest.
Yeah. I need to ask, just because recently Square Enix has been releasing a lot of games with very questionable titles, like Variant Daylight. And I mean, Triangle Strategy, that one's kind of obvious because you're 3 countries and it's a strategy game. So
Still not a very good name.
Not a great name. What in the fuck is a Dio, a Field, and a Chronicle?
So the island is like called DioField or something, except there's like different parts of the island called like Westfield and Northfield and Eastfield and Southfield.
Is it because they exist to the north, south, east, and west?
Yes.
Of the island. Okay.
Correct.
Sure. All right.
I don't know what the Dio is yet, but maybe there's like a JoJo crossover or something.
That's the thing. If this game is just one giant long con JoJo's reference, it might be the most brilliant game of 2022.
I mean, if Dio's the final villain, like, I'll give it 10 out of 10.
it was me, Dio, right? Like if that's the end, if that's the long con for this, I will appreciate it from afar. I probably still won't play it, but I'll appreciate it from afar.
No, I only if you're like really interested in the genre. I will say, like Triangle Strategy, there are also 3 countries at war in this game too. And like pretty much every other strategy RPG out there. So yeah,
Right.
Not the most original narrative.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it. I think let's talk about the last game on our list here. 'Cause I think all of us have played it. I think, Rut, you've played it maybe? Prodeus?
No, not yet.
No. Oh, okay.
I've been playing Marauders the last couple days, trying to
Gotcha.
get a better understanding of that one.
Because I know, Austin, you played it. You reviewed it for us. You've
Yes.
been keeping an eye on Prodeus for a while because it was in early access.
Yeah, for quite a few years, even before it was in early access.
Yeah. So Prodeus is this, like, I've been playing it too. I've been playing because it's on Game Pass. It's on PC. I'm doing the stretch job right now. It's on Game Pass for PC and Xbox if you'd like to play it. I would describe it as if Boomer Shooters got an HD 2D. Like, it's the HD 2D of Boomer Shooters.
Yeah.
Because, like, it looks.
I actually put that in my review. I gave you credit though.
Thank you. It looks really good, right? Like it's all very like pixelated, like a Boomer Shooter, but the effects, the explosions, the blood like effects and all of that look really good. It looks, like, but it still fits on the pixelated bodies and, the world and the textures, right?
Yeah.
Outside
As
of that,
usual-
it's Boomer Shootery, right?
Yeah, I mean, the visuals are usually what drive me to play a Boomer Shooter, because other than that, I mean, the gameplay can be pretty similar. And Proteus is like just peak Boomer Shooter. I love the way it looks. What's also cool is that you can actually like tweak the visuals. You can make it even more pixelated. You can turn off sprites altogether to make it 3D.
Right.
So your guns and the enemies are no longer sprites, they're 3D models. It's just like they added a lot of options in there, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, as far as like, I don't know, I found interesting in it is that the overworld is like, it's very Mario-esque.
Yeah.
Because like between the levels, like there's a map where you're looking like top down and you go between, like everything's connected like dots in a line, right? But so you move between them a la a Super Mario World, right? Which I found interesting because most Boomer Shooters that I'm familiar with, they're just like, it's a level select screen at best, or you're just going from one level to the next, like just loading one after the other, right?
Yeah, there's even portals that you can go through, kind of like, Super Mario World, which I like.
I didn't know about that.
It's a bit later on, but
Right.
it definitely feels like that.
Yeah, it's as far as story goes, you might be able to speak more to it than me, Austin, because for me so far, the story is very generic, kind of. That might be the weakest part for me.
It's how it is for these types of games.
Yeah,
Usually it's gameplay first, and like story is at the way bottom.
Yeah, it's just demons and hell and on Mars and space, sci-fi, like
Yeah.
it's very
I mean,
doomy.
there's like a little bit of story if you select a level. Like it says, this is where, the forces of chaos fought or whatever. It's just flavor text, in my opinion, which I'm fine with. Again, it's normal for Boomer Shooters. I
Yeah,
just
like
want to shoot things.
You're here for the booming and the shooting, right?
Yeah.
I will say, if you do play this game, pro tip, I found this out only after a couple hours in, and I wish I found it in the beginning. Turn on always sprint.
Yep.
I didn't know that was an option, so I just been like kind of trying to hold shift like a pleb, and just turn on always sprint. It feels so much more like Doom when you do that, and that makes it infinitely better.
Yeah, it's a rookie move.
Well, hey, what can I do? Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I'm as infatuated with it as you are and some of the other people on staff, because I know some people on staff are talking like, oh, this is like gaudy potential, right?
Yeah.
Which for me, I think there's just enough where I'm like, yeah, it's fun, but I don't know if I'm going to stick to it through the end, because they do the thing where like it's collectibles to buy weapons and upgrades, which
Interesting.
not as big a fan of, but I guess for guide potential, right? Like you can, because you have to find ore, right? Is that what it's called? Ores. Yeah, and
There's
some of
also
them
like
are
runes that you have to find as well. So
so like
Interesting.
there's some things you have to like. Some of them are obvious. Some of them are like you have to secret rooms, hidden passages, that sort of thing. And I don't know. For me, it's like when I got to the shop for the first time, and it's like, oh, here's the super shoddy. You're one ore short. I'm like, it kind of sucks because the shotgun I've been using is kind of a piece of shit. And
nah, the shotgun's great.
the super shoddy feels better though.
It does.
Yeah.
I will say, yeah, the shop. I didn't even know about it until it released outside of early access, because as far as I know, it was like a release feature. I didn't really like that either in the game, and that was one of my negatives in the review, because I think that in boomer shooters you should try to like find weapons as you go on and get them naturally, and they'll give you circumstances in which you can use them, kind of like how it introduces the minigun. Like it gives you this big haul of enemies that you can just mow down.
Right.
It makes the gun feel more special than just buying it with collectibles, and I'm kind of going through a little bit to try and unlock all the weapons, but I've already beaten it, so at that point it's like, well, what's the point, you know?
Achievements.
I guess.
What's the point, right?
Achievements.
I think aren't there like 18 guns or something?
There's a good amount. I know that.
On PC at least, they do the thing where it's like, all of them are map 1 through 6, but then you press if you press 2 once, you get the pistols, but you press it twice, you get the dual wielding like submachine guns, and you press it 3 times and you get the minigun. It's like one of those. You have to cycle through on each number key.
You can also hold down Q and bring up a menu, which makes it a lot easier, but there's like 2 blank spaces for melee weapons. I don't think they have melee weapons yet, but they were planning on adding them. And they're actually working on mini campaign, a new one. So there might be quick. More to come. Yeah, they are quick.
Yeah, that's a shame, because I was hoping there'd be more melee weapons, because I love how the fists work. Like if you just click one, like it's pretty slow punch, but then if you hold both left and right click, it's like you fucking beat the shit out of people.
Like it does no for it, like pulverizing enemies. Yeah.
Wow,
it's great.
Like I feel like it does no damage, so it's not really worth doing, but the animation for it is very funny. Yeah.
You have to like beat an enemy to a pulp, and their body just like it's gone. If you hold it down, I just like that's amazing. I love it.
That is pretty good. But yeah, I think it's definitely one of the highlights in terms of shooters for this year, because I can't think of that many like really good shooters that came out this year so far.
Neon White, but
I feel like
a unique one.
Metal Hellsinger.
Yeah. Well, Metal Hellsinger too. I guess I'm talking like straightforward like boomer shootery sort of thing, because I wouldn't call Hellsinger or Neon White like, you're not going to go in there. It's a straightforward sort of thing. There's some strategy, some timing, and all that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we haven't had I can't think of any.
We get a lot in early access, but that's the thing. Like, I don't consider early access a full release.
Yeah.
And like 90% of boomer shooters just release in early access, and we've had a lot this year, but not a lot as far as I remember, as far as like full releases. So
right, I know some people are out there saying that Prodeus is better than Doom Eternal, so if that's like the bag you're looking for, check out Prodeus, because they're both on Game Pass. You can compare and contrast if you want. Personally, I still think I like Doom Eternal more, and Doom 2016 to an extent, but I mean they're still all really good games.
Prodeus is like if the Doom series didn't evolve beyond Doom 3, kind of,
or
like
2.
I guess 2, where it just kind of stayed to its traditional 90s roots, and this is like what the 2022 version of Doom 2 would look like, or something like that.
I think it's a spiritual successor to those.
Definitely. I mean, the developers were like Doom modders, map modders. So yeah,
They were waters.
yes.
Yeah, because I think I like the bombast in Doom Eternal and 16 a little more. Like the glory kills, the weapon mods are ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
I think Prodeus is a little more straightforward with it, a little more old school with it, which has its own audience, right?
It's a bit more restrained in the weapons, but not the gore. The gore is still pretty gory.
Even if it's all pixelated, like it's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't pull its punches. Neither should you.
Yes.
But I think that does it for this week's episode of the TechRaptor Podcast. We hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please feel free to leave us a review on whatever platform you are listening on, and let us know in the comments below which of Square Enix's games are you playing from the past week, Valkyrie Elysium or DioField Chronicles, or have you forgotten both came out already? Let us know down below. We will be back next week, and if you want more of our site, we are always publishing news, reviews, and features at techraptor.net, but this show will be back in your feed next Monday. We'll see you then.
See ya.